Hello everyone, this is Professor Robert Solis. Welcome to this video lesson. What we're going to do is to translate this flowchart into a Visual Basic program. This is the flowchart that's responsible for generating a hexagon. An octagon. So let me switch back over here to Visual Studio, and you can see that I've already got the user interface ready to go. In this case, I have the text box that the user is going to enter how big the side is going to be. And we have a submit button, and then we're going to display the actual hexagon over here. So let me switch back over here to the code part. I already had the declaration set and ready to go. Let me switch back and forth, and I'll just simply show you how to translate this. All right, well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to declare all these variables as whole numbers, so obviously that means integer. So let me declare side as a whole number. So dim side as integer. Next, we're going to dim spaces drawn. Okay, so dim spaces drawn as integer. Next, stars drawn. Okay, so dim stars drawn as integer. After that, we have spaces out. So dim spaces out as integer. Oops, sorry, integer. Here we go. Spaces in as integer. Rows drawn. Okay, so dim rows drawn as integer. And then finally rows to draw. So dim rows to draw as integer. All right. The next thing that we need to do according to the flowchart is to clear the display. All right, so I'm going to do that right here. LBL result.text is going to equal to nothing. Okay? That's clearing the display. We're going to read the side. All right. So in this case, under the get user input, the value that's going to be placed into side is going to be coming from, so convert dot to int32 from the text box dot text. Now, if that side is less than 2 or greater than 8, if that's true, then we need to display a message box because the number that's going to be entered by the user must be in the range 2 to 8. So over here, I'll have an if statement. I guess I could put that in the calculation section. And let me scroll down just a little bit. There we go. If the side is less than 2, or if the side is greater than 8, then, okay, so if this is true, display a message box with the error message, okay? So we'll say message box dot show, and the first thing I'm going to do is to indicate that they need to enter a number, right? Enter a number between 2 and 8. That's in essence what this problem is. They didn't enter a number in the correct location. The caption, we'll say something like invalid input. We're going to display an OK button and an asterisk. Let's say, for example, in terms of the icon. Once we've done that, we want to exit the sub. Okay, so we'll just say exit sub. Now, this is what we're going to do if that statement is true. Now, if the statement is false, that is, if the side is not less than 2, or if the side is not greater than 8, then we're going to do something else. Let's see here. Let me scroll down. In this case, spaces drawn is going to equal to 0. Next, stars drawn is going to equal to 0. And then we're going to have spaces out is equal to side minus 1. Okay, so spaces out is going to equal to side minus 1. And spaces in is going to be set to 0. So spaces in, let's see here, okay, we spell that spaces in. We're going to set that to 0. And then rows drawn, we're going to set that to 0. So rows drawn, set that to 0. Rows to draw. Okay, so let me get this straight. Rows to draw. We're going to set that to 2 times the side. So 2 times the side plus side minus 2. Okay, so plus parens side minus 2. Okay, that's what we're going to do as a result of this being false. Okay, now the next thing that we need to do is, it looks like we have this overall diamond shape that looks to be a while statement, because you can see how we're coming back into this. In fact, I don't even need to look at the overall flowchart. I can just see that we're coming back to this right here. So we first enter it here, but look how we're coming back to this thing. And we're determining if this thing is false, then exit the sub. Otherwise, if it's true, then we're going to be doing stuff here. Okay, well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to type in the while statement. Now, this while statement does not have to be inside of this if statement. So I'm going to put this over here and say while what? While the rows drawn is less than rows to draw. Okay, while the rows drawn is less than the rows to draw. Okay, while that is true, we do this. Now, once that's false, what do? Exit sub. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come over here. And it looks like we end the sub anyway, so really I don't have to put anything there. So this output really belongs somewhere inside here, this output comment. So let me just cut that and put that over here, say for example, in terms of what we're going to be doing. Now, if you didn't know to put the output comment over here, because this is what we're doing here, we're drawing the output, that's okay, that's no big deal. I know from experience, looking at this, we're going to be drawing the octagon, so therefore this has to be part of the output. But again, don't worry about that, that's no big deal. When this thing is false, we're going to end the sub, so that really takes care of this part over here, right? We're exiting the sub when this is false. But while this is true, look at what we're doing. This is a diamond, and so this is going to be an if statement, because we are not coming back into this thing immediately here. This is either making a decision to go in one direction if it's false, another direction if it's true. Okay, well in this case we're going to put if rows drawn is equal to 0. Okay, so within the while statement, if rows drawn is equal to 0. If that's true, all right, so if that's true, then what are we doing? Well, it looks like we are going to be doing this, where we have spaces drawn is equal to 0. Okay, so spaces drawn is going to be set to 0. And it looks like I have another while statement, a nested while statement inside here, because I can see the pattern. So while spaces drawn is less than spaces out. So while spaces drawn, sorry, I said while spaces drawn is less than spaces out. While this is true, we append a space to the output. Okay, so the output is our label. So whatever you are label, we're going to append an output. The next thing we're going to do is to increment the spaces drawn. So spaces drawn is going to be spaces drawn plus 1. We're incrementing that value. Okay, we keep on doing this over and over and over again, and then when this is false, it looks like we have to set stars drawn to 0. So when this is false, so let me get out of here. Okay, let me see here. Well, that's okay. When this is false, stars drawn is set to 0. Okay, so stars drawn is going to be set to 0. All right. Then look at this, another while statement. While stars drawn is less than side. While stars drawn is less than side. While this is true, what are we supposed to do? Append a star to the output. Output is going to be the old output, and I'm going to append a star. And then I'm going to increment the stars drawn. Excuse me. All right, stars drawn. We're going to increment that. Plus 1. All right, we keep on doing this over and over again. When this is no longer true, it looks like we're supposed to decrement the spaces out. So spaces out. Here we go. And we're going to decrement that. And what else are we supposed to do? Spaces in is set equal to side. So spaces in I said set equal to, is assigned is the correct terminology, is assigned side. Increment the rows drawn. Okay, so rows drawn is going to be incremented. And we move to the next row. Okay, so that means LBL result.text is going to be LBL result.text. We're going to concatenate a VB new line. All right. And once we're finished with that, as you can see, we go back over here to the while statement. While rows drawn is less than rows to draw. Okay, so while rows drawn is less than rows to draw. And then if that's true, if the rows drawn is equal to 0, so if the rows drawn is equal to 0, then that's an if statement that does all the stuff that we just created. If that's false, then here's another if statement over here. This is the next one. This is an else if statement. If this is true, continue. Else, if this is false, then we're going to consider this situation over here. Okay, so that's another if statement. So I'm going to go over here. If this is true, right? If rows drawn is equal to 0, and let's see here. It looks like the end if statement is right here. And what I need to do is I need to say else if, right? And that really belongs over here. Oh, I didn't type that correct. Sorry about that. Else if. Here we go. So if this is true, if the rows drawn is equal to 0, then do this. If that's false, then consider this. Else if rows drawn is less than side. Else if rows drawn is less than side. Then, well, if this is true, what are we supposed to do? We're supposed to set the spaces drawn to 0. Okay, so spaces drawn to 0. And then I have a while statement. While the spaces drawn is less than spaces out. While the spaces drawn is less than the spaces out. While that is true, append a space to the output. So we're going to append a space, here it is, to the output. Next, increment spaces drawn. So spaces drawn is going to be incremented by 1. Okay, we keep on doing this over and over again. Eventually, this is going to be false. And so what are we supposed to do? Append a star to the output. Okay, so when this is false, we append a star to the output. Then, what are we supposed to do? Spaces drawn is set to 0. Spaces drawn is going to be set to 0. The next thing to consider is another while statement. While spaces drawn is less than spaces in. While spaces drawn is less than spaces in. While that is true, append a space to the output. So for the output, append means add to. Specifically, we're supposed to add a space. Then we increment the spaces drawn. Spaces drawn. Sorry about that. Spaces drawn is going to be incremented by 1. Okay, so once that has been completed, when this while statement is no longer true, so let me go outside the while statement. Append a star to the output. Okay, so the output is going to be the old output, and we append a star. Decrement spaces out. Spaces out is going to be spaces out minus 1 because it's decrement. Increment spaces in by 2. Okay, spaces in is going to be incremented, so spaces in plus 2. Increment rows drawn. Okay, so rows drawn is rows drawn plus 1. Move to the next row. So LBL result.text is going to be the old output, and we're going to move to the next row, so it's VB new line. All right, now after that we follow this line over here, and as you can see, as we follow it, it goes back up. So let me scroll up here, and we go back to this overall while statement. While rows drawn is less than rows to draw. Okay, so if that's true, then we perform this if statement, and then if that's not true, we perform this if statement, which is the one that we've just created. And if this is not true, then we check to see if this is the situation. So let's work on this if statement. If rows drawn is less than 2 times side minus 1. Okay, so let me make sure that I'm tracking everything correctly. So here's that first if statement. And here's the second if statement, else if. And now we need to create a third else if statement. So over here, let's say else if, and specifically what? Rows drawn is less than, looks like parens 2 times side minus 1. Okay, minus 1. And let me go over here and press enter. All right, so here's our new if statement. And I'm supposed to append a star to the output. So append means add to, specifically a star to the output. Next, spaces drawn is set to 0. Spaces drawn is going to be assigned 0. Next, we have another while statement, a smaller one here that says while spaces drawn is less than 2 times side plus quantity side minus 4 close parens. Okay, so while spaces drawn is less than 2 times the side plus parentheses side minus 4. Press enter. Okay, so that's my while statement. If this is true, append a space to the output. So that's LBL, and append a space to the output. Let me put a space bar here. Next, increment spaces drawn. Okay, so spaces drawn is going to be incremented. Oops, sorry. Spaces drawn. Increment by putting 1 there. Okay. And we keep on doing this while loop over and over and over again. Finally, when the while loop is false, so let me say when the while loop is false, so we're outside of the while loop, what are we supposed to do? Append a star to the output. Okay. Append means add to. Specifically, we need to add a star to the output. Next, spaces out is going to be set to 1. So spaces out is set to 1. Increment the rows drawn. Okay, so rows drawn is going to be rows drawn plus 1. Move to the next row. Okay, so that's LBL result. It's going to be the old LBL result, and we're going to do a VB new line to move to the beginning of the next row. And as you can see here, then we move down and we move over here, which means we're going to go back to the top of the while statement, which is over here. And in the while statement, we have this first if statement. We've already written the code for that, as well as the second and the third if statement. If this is false, then we have another if statement. So let's work on this one. If the rows drawn is less than 2 times the side plus side minus 3 quantity. Okay, so let's see here. So we just finished this one over here where it says rows drawn less than 2 times side plus 1. That's this guy over here. But if we're not finished here, we have an else if statement that says if rows drawn is less than 2 times side, so less than 2 times side, plus quantity side minus 3, and then close parens. Okay. So if this is true, then what are we supposed to do? Well, set spaces drawn to 0. So spaces drawn, set that to 0. And let me scroll down just a little bit. And spaces drawn, this is a while statement right here. So while spaces drawn is less than spaces out. While spaces drawn is less than spaces out. If that's true, append a space to the output. So LBL, append means add to, and we're adding a space. Next, increment spaces drawn. Okay, so spaces drawn, we add 1 plus 1. We keep on doing this while loop. When it's no longer true, we append a star to the output. So when it's no longer true, we append a star to the output, which means this. Okay, after we've appended a star to the output, spaces drawn is assigned 0. So spaces drawn is going to be assigned 0. And looks like we have another while loop. And in this while loop, while spaces drawn is less than spaces in minus 4. Okay, so while spaces drawn is less than spaces in minus 4. Minus 4. And did I put a parens around that? I didn't put a parens around that, but that's okay. It doesn't matter. It'll just indicate that I'm wanting to find out if spaces drawn is less than this thing, not less than just spaces in. So I'm going to put a parentheses around there just to make sure that Visual Basic understands I'm comparing this with this thing. Excuse me. All right. Now, we keep on doing that, and while this is true, we append a space to the output. So output, and we append a space. Then we increment spaces drawn. Okay, so spaces drawn is going to be incremented, and we keep on doing that. When this thing is false, then we append a star to the output. Okay, so when this is false, we append a star, whoops, to the output. Scroll down a little bit here. What else do I do? Increment spaces out. Okay, so spaces out is going to be spaces out, and we increment that by 1. Decrement the spaces in by 2. Spaces in is going to be spaces in, and we decrement that by 2, so minus 2. Increment the rows drawn. Okay, rows drawn is rows drawn plus 1. Move to next row. Okay, LBL is going to be the old label. We're going to concatenate that with a VB new line, which means go to the beginning of the next line. Okay, so once we finish this if statement, again, we're going to go back to the top, and that's the end of that particular if statement. And then we have finally one more if statement here to consider. It's our very last one. Else if the rows drawn is less than 2 times side plus side quantity, side minus 2. Okay, so let me switch back over here, and here's that previous else if statement. Let me go ahead and press enter, backspace, else if what? Rows drawn is less than 2 times side plus side minus 2. Side minus 2. Then, okay, so if that's true, then we assign spaces drawn to 0. So spaces drawn, we're going to assign that to 0. And then I have a while statement. While spaces drawn is less than spaces out. While spaces, whoops, I keep on doing that. While spaces drawn is less than spaces out. While this is true, append a space to the output. Okay, so we're going to append a space to the output. Then we increment spaces drawn. So spaces drawn, we increment that. So we add 1. We keep on doing this. Eventually, when this is false, we assign stars drawn to 0. So let me scroll down. Stars drawn, we're going to assign that to 0. And then we have another while loop. While stars drawn is less than side. Okay. While stars drawn is less than side. While this is true, append a star to the output. So we append a star to the output. Then, oops, let me scroll over here. We increment stars drawn. Okay, so stars drawn is going to be stars drawn plus 1. And eventually this thing is going to be false. And that means that afterwards we increment the rows drawn. Okay, so scroll down a little bit here. After this while statement, rows drawn is going to be incremented. So we add 1. All right. When we're finished with that, then as you can see, just like we've been doing in the past, that goes all the way back to the top to this while statement. And then while the rows drawn is less than rows to draw, then we do all this stuff. Otherwise, we're finally finished. Exit this up. So I think we've taken care of all of our if statements. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 if statements. Let's see if that's what we've got here. So we start off with this top if statement over here. Still haven't gotten to it yet. Here it is. So here's the first if statement. Then here's the second if statement. Here's the third one. Here's the fourth one. And then I think we've got one more, right? 5. And here it is. Here's the fifth one. And then finally, here's the end if. So I think that's it. Let me save my work. Let's see what happens. So start. Uh-oh, build errors. Would you like to continue? Nope, I got to find out what's going on here. Let me go to build and build solution. And what does it say here? Character is not valid. Let me double click on this. And what did I do wrong? What am I doing putting a semicolon there? Let me get rid of that semicolon. That's C++. That's not Visual Basic. Okay, let me start the program again. All right, here we go. Let me put the number 4 here. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't like the look of this because I don't think I used a monospaced font. So let me close this, go back to the design. And for this label, let me go to Properties. And specifically for the font, I need to select a Courier New Font. Courier New Font, that is. So let me go back over here and let's select Courier New. Because this is a monospaced font. I'll select 12 points. That perhaps maybe is too big, but that's okay. We can make an adjustment to the form. Save my work. Start again. Put in the number 4 here. Okay, that looks better. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That looks pretty good. I mean, it's not an exact octagon because the font is not considering the height, but that's all right. You get the idea. Type in the number 3. Okay, good. Let's try all the others. 5, 6. Okay, so I obviously have to increase the size of this thing here. So let me delete that, or stop the program, I should say. And let's make this thing a little bit taller. I could also decrease the font size as well. And maybe I should make this thing just a little wider. Say something like this. So therefore, I'll increase the width of the button and also the text box. Oops, I moved it there. Control Z. I want to open up the width. There we go. Save as. Start. All right, let's see. What does 6 look like? Good. 7, 8, 9. Oh, I can't do that because enter a number between 2 and 8. Click OK. Okay, so how about if I say, oh, why did I put 3 to 11 there? Let me go back to my pseudo code here, or to my flowchart. Did I do something incorrect here? Incorrectly? Yeah, side is less than 2 or if side is greater than 8. Okay, so I wasn't following the directions. Back over here, it's supposed to be anything that's less than 2 or greater than 8. Okay, so enter a number from 2 to 8. Well, that's not good. Pay attention here. Enter a number from 2 to 8. Enter. There we go. Enter a number from 2 to 8. That's what the flowchart says. I didn't pay attention to the flowchart. Well, I better make sure that my if statement is correct. So let me go back over here. Enter anything from 2 to 8. Okay, so I did pay attention on the code part. I just didn't pay attention in terms of my label. Did I just spell invalid incorrectly? Yeah, that's what happens when you type too fast. Save my work, start, let's test it out again. 2 works. 3 works. 4, 5, 6, 7, and finally 8. Okay, excellent. This looks great. Inappropriate values like 11. Nope, doesn't work. How about 0? Nope, that doesn't work. Got to put a number between 2 and 8. Fantastic. So that's how you do it. All right, so this is Professor Robert Solis. I hope this video lesson was helpful. Have a good day. See you next time.